Welcome to the Centre for Brexit Studies YouTube channel. Today we're joined by our researcher David Hearne. So yesterday Boris Johnson rejected Nicola Sturgeon's request for a second Scottish referendum. Surely this isn't the last we're going to hear about IndyRef2?
No, of course not. We're likely to see the issue perhaps slightly to the back burner until after the Holyrood elections next year. I think that if the SNP get a working majority, or at least are able to cobble together a coalition of parties that at a minimum take a neutral view on independence, I think particularly of the Greens, the Scottish Green Party, etc., then I think we are highly likely to see another strong push for a second independence referendum.
So we're now into the next phase of the Labour leadership contest. Lisa Nandy has won the backing of the National Union of mine workers. So do you think Lisa could be the dark horse here?
I don't know. It's difficult to say. I think part of that depends on how much of an issue Brexit becomes. Nandy is in a problematic position vis-à-vis the Labour membership. Because the Labour membership, and most Labour voters, it has to be said, are overwhelmingly Remainers. Nandy is famously a bit of a Brexiter, and she certainly has voted more than one occasion in favour of leaving the EU, and has come out sort of swinging for that. So it remains to be seen how toxic that view becomes with much of the membership. That's kind of the big question mark over her. If the Labour leadership contest kind of moves in a different direction from Brexit and moves towards other areas, then I think she might be on slightly safer ground, and under those circumstances could emerge as a bit of a dark horse. But I think for many Labour members, the key question is, can the person we elect hold Boris Johnson to account?
And on the subject of Lisa Nandy, she has criticised Labour Remainers for not having an internationalist vision of the UK's place in the world. Do you think this could sway Labour Remainers towards obviously voting for a different contestant then?
It's difficult to say. I mean, and in terms of the criticism itself, it's clearly spurious. I think frankly, that's nonsensical and it's just insulting. It's difficult to claim that Labour Remainers don't have a vision for the UK's place in the world when they clearly do. That simply builds on UK's membership of the European Union. That this is a membership that the UK has actually been extremely successful in exploiting over the past years. So to try and suggest that to support that somehow displays a lack of a vision is a bit mind-blowing. The more sort of substantive issue, will this sway people? I don't know. It's difficult. I can't get into the minds of most Labour Party members, but I would imagine for those that are staunch Remainers or class themselves as such, that Nandy will already be beyond the pale because of her position on Brexit. It's not like it's new for her to come out and say these kinds of things. She's been on record making similar comments for some time in the past.
So staying with Labour then, what do you think is the difference of people voting towards Keir Starmer and then also those voting towards Jess Phillips? Because obviously they're quite different people, to say the least. Do you think it's all about who the safer option here is?
No, I think a lot of it is about personality. That's always true in general elections. I mean, I think that one of the reasons why we see people win and people lose is because most voters, in my view, vote on the basis not of detailed examination of the policy. Most people, frankly, don't have time. People are trying to get on with living their lives. They look at the people in front of them and the people who are on their television screens every day and say, okay, well, who do I think is the most personable? Who do I think would be the better leader of the country? And I think that's certainly something you've seen this time around, and it's something that you've seen previously as well. Whether voters get those choices right, it's difficult to say whether it can be right or wrong in an election, but that's a whole another ball game, and you can have all kinds of questions over the media. But yeah, so I think that's the major issue. Phillips and Starmer are different characters. They have different qualities, and they have different drawbacks, if you like. I think there's a strong feeling of many within the Labour Party that the next leader should be a woman. Now, if you are in favour of a female leader, and you are in favour of someone who would like to remain in the EU. And Phillips has kind of come out on the extreme end of that, arguing that, you know, if Brexit doesn't work, then the UK should rejoin. Hard to see how that might work in practice, by the way, but that's by the by. Then it would make sense for members to vote in favour of her. Starmer seems more analytical and less off the cuff, so if you prefer that kind of style, and I certainly think there's a fair argument to be made that he'd be good at forensically holding Johnson's government to account, then you might vote in favour of him. But.
And so the EU's chief Brexit negotiator has said that there will be checks on goods going from Britain to Northern Ireland after Brexit. However, Boris Johnson has claimed that this won't be the case. In these kind of situations, who are we actually supposed to believe?
Who would you believe? I think that question ought to answer itself. More generally, it will obviously depend on whatever agreement the UK forges with the EU moving forward. If the UK remains in some kind of customs union and cleaves closely enough to the single market, then you can probably avoid checks. Otherwise, pretty difficult. I think Johnson is either pushing himself into a corner or pushing himself into a position where he's forced to agree a closer agreement than perhaps some in his party would want, or he is just spouting nonsense. Take your pick.
We'll wait and see. Thanks for joining me, David.
Thanks.